Hello, I'm Ashley Bennett, and I am a Sigma architect at Aimpoint Digital. Today, I'm going to walk you through the solution for week 44 of this year's Workout Wednesday for Sigma. This week, we'll be creating a calendar directly in Sigma. Let's get started.
First, we're going to add some underlying data. This is going to be our date spine, and we can find that in our Workout Wednesday space. By the time you view this, it will be in prod, not dev. We're just looking for this date spine. And now I'm also going to add an empty input table. And this can be against the Sigma sample database. And I want to have one text column called event name and one date column called event date. And we're going to label this as events. And then I'm just going to add some data to get started. And I will also need some summary columns. Let's move my face. And let's add we want the min and the max. But we're going to call this earliest event and latest event. Okay. Now, I'm going to call this data. Now, we can join our two data sets. I'm going to create a child table. And in this child table, I'm going to join. I want to join to my events table. I don't need these summary columns. What's happened here? Elements, events. I don't need the summary columns, but I do want the name and I don't need the date either. I just need the name. Then I want this to be my event date to join to. And now I preview my output. Most of the time this is going to be null, but we are going to see some event names pop through. Done. Excellent. And now we are ready. Let's filter our date spine to a more manageable list. I am going to add a helper column here. We're going to call this is in event years. And I'm going to use this formula here where I check if what's that column called? I'm going to call this date. Okay. And what I'm doing here is I'm checking that the year of the date is either greater than or equal to the earliest event from our events table, or less than or equal to the latest event. And now I want to filter this to be true. We are expecting about 2 years of data because I have an event for next year in there. We're going to call this our events with spine. And now I can set up a date filter on my events with spine table. And I am going to filter my month of date. I'm going to use Shift F to filter. And then I'm going to convert this to a page control, but I do not want a date range. I just want the date, and we're just going to select the first because we are expecting, as this is truncated, to be Sigma recognizes this as 10/1/2025. So if we were to select like 10/2, we're going to get no data. We want this to be the first of the month. We could use a helper column to account for that and always get the month regardless of what day is selected. But this is not going to be shown to the end user, so we're good to go. Now, what I want to do is create my pivot table. And in this pivot table, we're going to have our eventual calendar. And what I want is in my pivot rows, let's select week of date. And in my, let's also format this using a custom format. We're just going to put in the percentage sign, and it will show up as blank, completely blank, because we don't really need to see that. And now in my pivot columns, I want to put the day of the week. And notice this is not in the correct order, so we're going to custom sort this on day of week integer. And we have to choose an aggregation, so we're going to average that and show smallest largest. And so we have Sunday through Saturday. And in my values, I want to add a new column, and I want to put in this function here where I'm going to concatenate the day of month, and if the event name is not null for that day, then we will concatenate a hyphen and a distinct list of event names on that day. And I'm going to call this day event. Awesome. And now I want to format this because this does not look very pretty. I'm going to give this a title, call this events calendar. I do that just for being able to identify things, but I'm immediately going to hide that because I don't care. And then in my table style, I want presentation large, and we're going to show all grid lines. And then I want to bold, wrap text, and then in my table components, I don't need to show the headers at all. And under totals, I don't want to show any of them. So now I can make this really small. Let's also go back to my table style, and under subheaders, I want to have the column headers center justified. Now, these will auto size based on the data that's in them. We could choose to set them to specific widths if we so choose. That's a little bit more even. Just eyeballing some things here. Okay. And then I also want to add some conditional formatting. Let's do not is null or is not null. Let's do text contains, and we're going to look for that hyphen. And we'll highlight that. I'm going to change that though to a color I prefer. I like purples. And with all of this set up, I can also now create some buttons that will let users navigate between months. I'm going to do here, I like to stretch my buttons, And let's see, I want to put in an arrow. And then let's add an action. On click, I want to update control to a formula, and I'm going to add a month. Well, subtract a month, really, from my month of date control. And then I can duplicate this. Let's move you all the way over here, turn that space. And we're going to set this to positive, add one positive month, and change my arrow to face the other way. Okay. Awesome. And then I will put some dynamic text in between my two buttons. Make that all the way. I'm going to center justify and use a small heading. And I'm going to use this dynamic text to get the month of date control formatted with the full name and the year. Okay, to get our buttons to work, I first saved my workbook so that they had published value. And now when I hit the buttons to go back and go forward, I can do so with ease. Excellent. Now that I have a working calendar, I want to create a new modal. And in this modal, I am going to allow users to add an event. So I'm going to call this add event. And I'm going to label this here, add event. And I want to add some controls. I want a text input. These are going to be for user input, so I don't necessarily care about creating them from columns. And this is going to be called event name. And I'm going to call this AE for add event name. And then I'm going to add a similar control that is just a date, not a date range. And I'm going to call this event date and AE event date. They don't need targets, and I am going to make the width of this extra small. And now my buttons, let's see, well, that's good. In my footer, I want to, primary button will be add event, secondary button will be clear form, and I also want to, before I do this, container my controls, and I'm going to call this the add event controls. And now on my modal actions, when I click my primary button, this is my add event button, I want to insert row into my events table where the event name is my event control and event date is my event date control. Perfect. And then after that, I want to clear my container. And my secondary form will just clear the container. And then on close, I also want to clear my container. So it's all fresh and lovely whenever someone needs it to be. Okay. And Now, in order for someone to use said modal, I am going to add another button. I'm going to just add it up here. And I am going to call this add event. I like this to be stretched. And the only action will be to open my modal. Open modal, add event. Excellent. Now let's test this. We can add an event and let's just say, wow, challenge again. And that will be another challenge on a Wednesday. Let's add the event. We did not say to close our modal, which is fine in our case because maybe people want to add multiple events. And if we go back to it, it is nice and cleared out. And we'll see that next month we have a WOW challenge. Awesome. Now let's arrange all of our elements into an app. I want to move these buttons and these selected things to a new page. I'm going to call this my calendar. I'm going to hide my data page because users don't need to see all of that. I do want to set this to be editable in the published version, which will happen pending publish. And let's go ahead and add a title. I like my titles to be medium heading. That's just my preference. I'm going to call this events calendar. And trim some space. Okay. And now I want to add a workbook theme in my workbook settings. I'm going to make this dark mode and change my colors. Let's make things our highlight purple. Lovely, looks great. And now I also don't like that how light that conditional formatting is. So I'm going to go back here and just change the color to be a little bit darker. And now we can demo our full app. I'm going to publish, and we will present. We will go to our published version, and now let's look at our events. Awesome. You can see events. Let's go ahead and add an event. I will add Christmas, and that will be December 25th. Let's add that event. X that out, and we see Christmas is added. Excellent. How might we ensure that only approved events get added to our calendar? You could add an approval workflow to this to make it a more robust data app. I covered how to do this in my last challenge, which was week 40. So I recommend you take a look and start thinking about how you can combine your data apps.
Wasn't that easy? I'll see you next time for more Sigma challenges.